Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He left the military to build a dream farm in the quiet plains of Nebraska. But when his tools began vanishing one by one, he uncovered a web of theft, corruption, and betrayal, and turned his land into a digital fortress. This is how one farmer fought back. It started with a dream. Not the fleeting, vague kind you forget after your morning coffee. A real one. The kind that takes over your life and makes you sell everything, pack up, and move 1,000 miles west with nothing but a half-finished plan and a gut feeling. That's exactly what I did 2 years ago when I traded my cramped Denver apartment and a 15-year career in military electronics for 100 acres of open Nebraska sky and rich soil. I was 39, with no wife, no kids, and enough savings to be stupid. So I bought a farm. I called it Hawkstead. Cheesy, I know. And for a while, it was everything I hoped it would be. I ran the place myself with the help of 3 seasonal workers, 2 college kids, and a retired trucker named Walt. We grew organic vegetables for upscale restaurants in Lincoln and Omaha. I installed a full drip irrigation system, $12,000 worth every cent, and splurged on a John Deere tractor that cost me $45,000. I had generators, a full set of DeWalt electric tools, and a welder I brought with me from Colorado. My workshop was cleaner than most kitchens, and my farm ran like clockwork. For a guy who used to design surveillance systems for the Army, building a farm from scratch was just another kind of engineering. The piece lasted about 4 months. The first thing to go missing was a 5-gallon gas can. I noticed it one morning sitting where it shouldn't have been, and by the time I finished breakfast, it was gone. I figured Walt had moved it, or one of the kids had borrowed it for the lawnmower. Then a coil of copper wire vanished from my tool shed. That made me pause. Copper's not something you misplace, but I still didn't think theft. I blamed it on my own forgetfulness. Long days in the sun, too much on my mind. Then one morning, I went to start the generator for the greenhouse heaters and found a bare patch of concrete where it used to sit. That one hurt. $3,000 gone, just like that. I stood there for 10 minutes trying to convince myself I'd maybe moved it for maintenance or loaned it to someone. I hadn't. 2 weeks later, my welder disappeared. $2,500 plus sentimental value. I still had my name stenciled on it from when I served. A few days after that, a full set of Milwaukee power tools, drills, grinders, the whole shebang, walked off. That was another $4,000 down the drain. Now I was pissed. I drove into town, bought a set of cheap trail cams from the sporting goods store, and mounted them on the barn, the driveway, and the eastern tree line. They weren't top tier, but I figured they'd catch something. They lasted exactly 6 hours. I checked them the next morning. All 3 had been cleanly sliced from their mounts. Whoever it was knew exactly where to look, and then came the gut punch. I walked out to my equipment hangar one morning and saw the big John Deere sitting lopsided. The hydraulic tiller attachment, and the one I used to prep 80% of my planting rows, was gone. $18,000 vanished overnight. It wasn't small. It wasn't light. You'd need at least 2 guys in a flatbed to move it without making noise. That same night, my main irrigation pump station, the heart of my drip system, went dark. Gone. $8,000 more flushed down the toilet. I called the sheriff again. Same deputy showed up. Young guy, polite, bored as hell. Took some notes, walked around, poked at the barn locks. "Looks like pros," he said. "No footprints, no prints at all. Might be an organized crew." "Thanks," I said. "You guys doing anything about it?" He shrugged. "We'll keep an eye out. But out here, you're pretty isolated. These guys know what they're doing." That was it. A shrug and a clipboard. By then, the total damages were closing in on $40,000. I wasn't just bleeding money. I was being surgically gutted. I pulled out the map and stared at it for a long time. My farm sat a half-mile outside Prairie Homes, a gated community that sprouted up 5 years ago like a tick on the edge of my land. Big houses, fake lakes, a volunteer HOA with too much time on their hands. Between me and them, there was nothing but open prairie and a single gravel road that passed right by their security booth. That booth had cameras. I'd seen them blinking, and a gate that went up and down like clockwork. If anyone was coming to my property in the middle of the night, they had to pass that booth. And nobody seemed to see a damn thing. It took me a week to stop playing the same questions on loop in my head. How did they get past the dogs? Why didn't the motion lights catch them? How the hell do you steal a 1,000-pound tiller in dead silence? But the more I obsessed, the clearer one thing became. These weren't random drifters or drug addicts rolling dice on what they could carry. These people were organized. They knew exactly what they were looking for. They knew where I kept it, and they knew when I wouldn't be watching. So I did what I always do when the world stops making sense. I opened a spreadsheet. I went back through my farm logs, camera install dates, delivery receipts, anything with a timestamp. And soon enough, the pattern smacked me right in the face. Every theft had happened on either a Tuesday or a Friday, always between 2 and 4 in the morning, always from a location that required knowing the layout, not just what to take, but how to get to it quickly and quietly. And the cameras? Cut down barely 6 hours after I installed them. That meant someone had been watching me, maybe from the road, maybe with binoculars, maybe even from a drone for all I knew. I hadn't noticed any buzzing, but hell, these days you can get a quiet quadcopter with night vision off Amazon for $500. I pulled up satellite imagery on my laptop, zoomed in on the area between my east fence and the Prairie Homes entrance. There it was, the only paved road connecting my property to civilization, curving right past the HOA's security booth. The place had a gate, one of those drop-arm barriers, and a little brick shack where the guards sat on folding chairs playing Candy Crush and pretending they were the FBI. Those cameras, state-of-the-art. I knew because I helped design the same model during my time contracting for base security overseas. Motion-activated, infrared, cloud-backed. If a gnat farted in front of them, they'd log it in triplicate. If anyone had been driving up to my farm, the booth would have seen it. And if they weren't sounding alarms, well, that meant one of two things. Either the guards were blind, or they were in on it. I decided to test that theory the polite way. I shaved, threw on a clean button-up, and drove over to the HOA office. The place looked like a miniature city hall, all glass and landscaping, trying to pretend it wasn't built on HOA dues and bad taste. Inside, a woman with the energy of a brick wall greeted me from behind a granite desk. "I'm looking to get access to the road camera footage," I said, keeping my voice casual. I had some property stolen from my farm just down the road, and the timing lines up with vehicles coming in or out of your development. Her smile froze. "Sir, that information is private. Only authorized personnel or law enforcement can request camera archives." "I understand," I said, "but it's not like I'm asking for every second of every day. Just footage from a few hours on the nights I was robbed." "I'm sorry, but that's against policy." She wouldn't even look me in the eye, like she'd practiced that script 100 times. So I called the sheriff's department and filed a formal request. Took 2 days for the paperwork to shuffle through whatever black hole they used for case management. On the 3rd day, I got a call from Deputy Klein, same guy who responded to my last theft. He sounded exhausted. "Hey, Mr. Hawk, just heard back from the HOA. They said the footage you're requesting no longer exists. They only retain recordings for 7 days. After that, the data is automatically overwritten." I stared at the phone like it had insulted my mother. "Wait," I said slowly. "You're telling me a gated community with high-end surveillance doesn't back up their video off-site?" "That's what they claim." "That's convenient." "Yeah," he muttered. "It is." I hung up and just sat there in my truck, parked under the shade of an old elm, trying not to lose it. $40,000 in stolen equipment. An HOA sitting on camera footage that conveniently disappears. A security team that either doesn't notice a midnight flatbed leaving with a 1,000-pound tiller or lets it through. I knew I wasn't crazy. I also knew I wasn't going to get help from the local cops. Not because they didn't care. Because they couldn't. Later that night, I did some digging, and that's when I found the missing puzzle piece. Deputy Klein. Full name Clinton Boyd. I'd never thought to look him up before, but one quick run through local Facebook groups and LinkedIn profiles, and there it was. His older brother, Russell Boyd, head of security at Prairie Homes HOA. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so goddamn perfect. Of course, the same deputy who downplayed my reports, filed lazy paperwork, and shrugged off the thefts was related to the man running the booth that just happened to see nothing. Of course, the guy I'd trusted to help me was feeding my case into a paper shredder while his brother's goons cleared me out one tool at a time. That's when I realized something dangerous. I was on my own, and that's when I started planning. Once I accepted that the local police were compromised, something in me snapped into place. Not panic, not rage, focus. In the Army, we used to say that once you identify the breach, the solution stops being emotional and starts being mechanical. I didn't need sympathy or promises. I needed data. And if the thieves were watching my farm, I would build a system that watched them back, without them ever knowing it existed. The first rule was simple: nothing obvious. The cheap trail cameras had been a test, and the result told me everything. They were cut clean, fast, and confidently. Whoever did it wasn't stumbling around in the dark. They were checking angles, scanning silhouettes, and neutralizing anything visible. So I stopped putting eyes where people expect eyes to be. Instead, I went to the woods. Over the course of a week, I installed 6 infrared micro cameras in the tree line surrounding the eastern and southern edges of my property. Not on my land proper, close enough to see, far enough to avoid casual inspection. Each unit was mounted high, angled down, camouflaged with bark wraps and foliage. No indicator lights, no local storage. Everything streamed straight to a private cloud server I'd set up under a shell account. If someone found one and smashed it, all they'd get was a useless plastic shell and my middle finger in digital form. Next came motion sensors, silent ones. No lights, no alarms, just passive infrared triggers tied into my phone. If anything heavier than a deer crossed certain perimeter lines, I'd know within seconds. I set overlapping zones so no single failure would blind me. Redundancy is love. Redundancy is life. Then came the part I enjoyed a little too much: GPS trackers. I ordered a dozen of them. Industrial grade, long life batteries, no audible ping. The kind you bury inside machinery casing where only a full teardown would reveal them. I embedded trackers into a compressor, a chainsaw, and an old generator I didn't even care about anymore. That generator became my favorite piece of equipment overnight. I dragged it into the tool shed, cleaned it up, and parked it right where it was easiest to see. No lock, no cover. A bright, tempting little "Steal Me" sign without the sign. While all this was happening, I kept meticulous notes. I tracked nights when nothing happened, nights when the sensors flickered but nothing crossed the threshold. I compared it with the publicly available HOA security schedules I dug up on Prairie Home's own website, because nothing says we're professional like posting guard rotations online. Funny thing about arrogance, it makes people sloppy. The overlaps were perfect. The nights my equipment disappeared lined up exactly with specific guard shifts. Same 3 names kept popping up. One of them I recognized immediately, a guy named Tyler who worked the gate. I'd seen him half asleep in the booth more than once, lifting the barrier without even checking IDs. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't threaten lawsuits. I didn't even adjust my routine. I wanted them comfortable, confident, lazy. By the end of that week, my farm looked exactly the same to the naked eye. Same quiet fields, same open road, same vulnerable equipment. But under the surface, it had turned into a web of sensors, timestamps, geolocation logs, and video feeds that updated in real time. I slept better than I had in months, not because I felt safe, but because I knew the next move wouldn't be theirs. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the forecast had called for light fog, and fog's a thief's best friend. I didn't bother calling Walt or the kids in that day. Something told me it would be better if I was alone. I spent the afternoon moving a few tools around, double-checking tracker batteries, syncing motion alerts. The generator sat in the shed, freshly wiped down, cables coiled neatly like a polite invitation. I left the door unlocked. That night, I didn't sleep. I parked my truck about 200 yards out deep in the trees, wrapped in a blackout tarp, nose pointed toward the barn, phone in my lap, one earbud in. The app was open. My sensors, cameras, GPS, all synced into a single interface. I had a thermal feed from the eastern trees and a motion sweep from the north. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the first alert came in. Motion, east fence line. My heart started pounding in that quiet, predator way. The same rhythm I used to feel when we'd wait on a rooftop in Kandahar, watching for movement through a thermal scope. I opened the live feed. There they were. Pickup truck. No lights. Slow approach on the gravel path. 3 figures. I zoomed in with the infrared. Faces were blurred from the distance, but the truck was a dark Dodge Ram, extended cab, with a dent in the rear quarter panel. It rolled right past my main gate. Didn't even pause. Like they owned the place. The figures dismounted. All black clothing, soft soles, duffel bags. One carried bolt cutters. One had a flashlight angled down, barely aglow. The third went straight for the tool shed like he'd been there before, like he knew. I switched to the internal cam in the shed. Crystal clear, they went right for the generator. No hesitation. Lifted it, grunted softly. I could hear it through the parabolic mic I'd hidden in the rafters. One of them pulled his mask off for a second to wipe his face. That's when I froze. It was Tyler, HOA Gateboy. Same smug face, same haircut, just now paired with black gloves and a ski mask around his neck. He looked straight at the camera for a second. Not that he knew it was there. I hit record even though everything was already auto-syncing to the cloud. They loaded the generator in the truck bed and rolled out. Same way they came, quiet as shadows. The whole operation took under 10 minutes. I switched to GPS. The signal pinged every 10 seconds. The dot was moving south, past my perimeter, curving toward Prairie Homes. I watched the little icon make the turn onto their private road, roll past the security booth without stopping, of course, and then slow as it approached a cul-de-sac lined with oversized beige homes. It stopped at one. Address pinged, 42 Finch Lane. I didn't need Google Maps to tell me who lived there. Russell Boyd, head of security. The dots connected so fast it was almost insulting. The thefts, the same gate guard on every shift. The disappearing footage, the lazy police reports, the whole damn shell game. I logged the footage, backed it up twice, time-stamped everything, added the GPS track overlay, cross-referenced it with public shift schedules, built a dossier in a shared folder, and uploaded it to a burner cloud account. By 4 in the morning, I had them dead to rights, but I didn't call the cops. Not yet. I didn't trust them, because now I knew they weren't just turning a blind eye. One of them might have been holding the flashlight. I didn't sleep that day, didn't even try. I drank 2 cups of thick coffee that tasted like battery acid and stared at the folder I'd built. 67 files, organized, time-stamped, cross-referenced. Faces, license plates, GPS tracks, camera angles, every angle covered. The kind of file that would have made my old CO nod in satisfaction. I knew better than to send it to the sheriff's office. Deputy Clint Boyd, Russell's younger brother, had shown his hand already, slow-walking reports, brushing off evidence. Handing this to him would be like asking a fox to guard the blueprint of your henhouse. So I went around him. I drove 3 hours east to Lincoln and walked straight into the county prosecutor's office. No appointment, no lawyer. Just a flash drive, a calm voice, and a good shave. I asked to speak with someone handling organized theft cases. They gave me a young assistant DA named Carla Moretti, sharp suit, eyes like razors. She raised an eyebrow when I introduced myself, but didn't interrupt. I handed her the flash drive and said, "Watch this before you dismiss me." She did. 15 minutes into the footage, she looked up and asked, "Why the hell hasn't this been investigated already?" I smiled, because the guy running your neighborhood theft ring has a brother wearing a badge. That got her full attention. The rest moved fast. She called in a state investigator and a deputy from the neighboring county. We sat down at a side table, and I walked them through everything. How the thefts began, the cameras I installed, the GPS track, the faces I captured, the link to Russell Boyd. Carla asked a dozen hard questions. I had answers ready for all of them. At one point, she leaned back and muttered, "This is gold." By the end of the day, we had a plan. They wanted to catch them in the act. A full takedown, no wiggle room for lawyers or loopholes. But we needed bait. Something expensive. Something they'd want bad enough to come back. I offered up my newest prize, a walk-behind tiller worth $5,000, custom ordered just a week ago. Fresh paint, clean serial number, shiny enough to attract flies. I wheeled it into the center of the barn, wired it with a tracker, synced the cameras, left the barn door open just wide enough to tempt. Then I waited. The plan was simple. If the thieves came back, I'd alert the task force. They'd have a mobile unit stationed less than a mile away. Unmarked, night vision equipped, fully briefed. The second the equipment crossed my gate, they'd follow. The second it entered Russell Boyd's garage, they'd roll in. It was the most expensive trap I'd ever set. But I figured $5,000 was a small price to pay to drop a noose around these bastards' necks. Friday night arrived with a sky full of stars and an eerie stillness. At 2:09 a.m., the motion alert pinged. I opened the feed. Same damn truck, same crew. Tyler again, now looking even sloppier, like months of easy pickings had dulled his edge. He and 2 others moved straight to the barn, laughing low, like they were strolling into a Walmart for a discount TV. They loaded the tiller in under 5 minutes. I hit the button on my secure chat app. They're in, heading south. The response was immediate. Confirmed. Tail active. Wait for word. I sat in silence, watching the GPS dot move. Southbound. Turn onto Prairie Homes Main Road. Slow roll past the gate. Again. No stop. Then right onto Finch Lane. Final ping at Russell Boyd's garage. 2 minutes passed. Then came the radio silence crackle on the feed. Then lights. Bright, blinding, sudden. Sirens split the night like a blade through canvas. Red and blue strobes lit up the cul-de-sac like the 4th of July. I watched from my remote cam as black-clad officers poured from unmarked vans shouting commands. Get on the ground. Show me your hands. One of the crew bolted for the backyard. Didn't get 10 steps before a taser hit him mid-stride and turned him into a twitching sack of regret. Tyler froze halfway through lifting the tiller and dropped it with a crash. He dropped to his knees. I paused the video right there just to savor it. And Russell? According to the after-action report I got later, he tried to escape through the back alley, barefoot, carrying a duffel bag full of cash and 3 flash drives. Made it exactly 47 yards before a K-9 unit introduced him to the gravel face first. They cuffed the whole crew on site, found multiple stolen items mid-unloading, tagged every item with UV pens, took photos, logged serial numbers. They didn't just get caught, they got cataloged. I drove into town the next morning, not because I needed to. Hell, the prosecutor's team had already told me to stay put and wait, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I parked across the street from the Prairie Home security booth, engine off, sunglasses on. Tyler wasn't there, of course. No one was. The shack stood empty, gate raised like it had given up. For the first time in months, I felt like the road didn't belong to someone else, like it might be mine again. That feeling lasted about 10 minutes. I got a call from Carla Moretti herself. You might want to come to the impound warehouse, she said. Bring coffee, it's going to be a long day. I got there before noon. Industrial building outside Lincoln, cold as hell, steel walls and concrete floor, with a dozen people already moving between tables full of tagged equipment. My generator sat near the front, its casing cracked, cables dangling. The tiller I'd used as bait was scuffed but intact, but that was just the beginning. They'd brought in everything they pulled from Russell Boyd's property. Not just the garage, but a second storage unit he'd been renting under a false name in a neighboring town. He must have thought using the name R. Boyden was clever. Spoiler, it wasn't. Inside that unit, and buried under tarps in the garage attic, they found enough gear to outfit a damn agricultural tech school. Tractors, welding rigs, irrigation modules, chainsaws, compressors, industrial batteries, even an entire ATV, some with serial numbers filed off, others so fresh they still had shipping labels attached. Estimated value, over $120,000. And that was conservative. Moretti walked me through the tables like it was a museum tour. This one yours? She asked, pointing to a familiar green air compressor. Yeah, I said. Engraved my initials under the handle. Flip it. She did. There they were. DH. She smiled. That's what we call admissible. They found even more than I expected. Devices from 4 other farms I recognized. People I'd met at farmers markets. Folks who'd lost enough to shut down whole operations. One of them, Mitch Leary, had sold his land last winter after his main tractor vanished in the middle of the night. Said he couldn't afford to keep losing equipment. Turned out, that very tractor, stripped, repainted, and retagged, was sitting 10 feet from where I stood, under a blue tarp in Russell's second garage bay. We called Mitch. He showed up in less than an hour, cried when he saw it. I pretended not to notice. Then came the paper trail, hidden inside a false panel in Boyd's garage, literally behind a stack of fertilizer bags. They found a locked gun safe. No weapons, just cash. $28,000 in rolled bills. 2 burner phones, and a black leather ledger with greasy fingerprints and a very stupid label, Ops Log. In it, handwritten entries listing dates, equipment types, street addresses, estimated resale, values, initials of crew members involved, and, this was the kicker, cut percentages. One name popped up again and again next to 10% cuts. MS. Got a full name for that? I asked. Moretti nodded grimly. Melinda Shaw, president of the Prairie Homes HOA. I laughed. Actually laughed. The neighborhood queen. Looks like she was picking targets. High-value properties, minimal security, owners who refused to cooperate with HOA inspections. You were one of them. No wonder I got stonewalled on camera footage. No wonder my reports disappeared into the void. Melinda had been acting like a real estate warlord, marking holdouts for pillaging. For every 10 grand in equipment they sold, she made $1,000 in passive income for doing nothing but pointing fingers. They raided her house that night, found more cash, another burner, and, bless her idiocy, HOA meeting minutes with private notes scribbled in the margins. Next to my name, refused community integration, possibly armed, watch schedule Tuesday, Friday, $, equip. That did it. I wasn't just a target of opportunity, I was selected. By morning, the state police had arrested 8 people. Russell Boyd, Tyler, and the other 2 security thugs, the middleman who fenced the stolen goods, Melinda Shaw, and even Deputy Clint Boyd, who was pulled from duty the moment the connection became undeniable. Turns out Clint had been feeding his brother police reports, location data, and even information about which properties had called for patrols recently, letting the crew know which areas were hot and which were open for the taking. He'd wiped at least 2 early incident reports from the database entirely. That's obstruction, tampering, and conspiracy, all wrapped up in a pretty little felony bow. When they brought him in for questioning, he didn't even deny it. Just said, "It's not like those farmers were using half that stuff anyway. I would have punched him, but I figured letting the courts do it for me would be more satisfying." The evidence pile was so high, they had to split the case across 3 judges. The prosecutor's office worked overtime. They had everything: security footage, GPS logs, sales ledgers, burner phone records, even emails Melinda thought she'd deleted. I wasn't allowed to witness the interrogation, but Moretti gave me a summary later. Said Russell cracked first. Blamed Melinda, blamed Clint, blamed the crew, the HOA, the town, the economy, the internet, probably gravity too. Tyler folded after 3 hours. Said he just wanted easy money and didn't think anyone would miss a few tools. Right, a few tools and a pump station and a $45,000 tractor. The funny part, none of them realized I'd been recording every step since the first bolt was lifted from my generator mount. They'd never suspected the nerdy farm guy with a lonely look in his eye would turn his property into Fort Knox with a side of Predator drone logic. They underestimated me. And now they were going to pay for that mistake. The courthouse in Lincoln didn't look like a place where justice happened. It looked like an overgrown DMV. Beige walls, bad lighting, chairs designed to punish posture. But that Monday morning, as I sat 2 rows behind the prosecution's table in courtroom B, it felt like a cathedral. Russell Boyd sat at the defense table, hands cuffed in front of him, wearing a suit that didn't fit, and a face that didn't match the bravado I remembered. His jaw was tight, but the bravado was gone, replaced by something brittle and twitchy. He wasn't in control anymore, and it showed. Next to him sat Melinda Shaw in a charcoal blazer and pearls like she was testifying at a HOA brunch meeting. She tried to look composed, but every time a new piece of evidence was brought up, the financial ledger, the burner phone logs, the footage of her speaking at HOA meetings while scribbling notes about targets in the margins, she visibly shrank in her seat. The prosecution rolled through their case like a damn freight train. Moretti laid it out with cold precision. Dates, footage, audio, wire transfers, even statements from the fence who'd already taken a plea deal. The jury didn't fidget. They barely blinked. And when she showed the infrared video of Tyler stealing my generator, mask off, mid-lift, you could hear the oxygen leave the room. And then came my turn. I took the stand, swore in, looked every juror dead in the eye. I walked them through the first theft, the gas can, the slow escalation, the sheriff's indifference, the fake lost footage, the realization that someone was inside the system. I explained the cameras in the trees, the GPS bait, the sting, the footage, the takedown. I told them about the tractor stolen from Mitch Leary, how the man had to sell his land because of one theft, how I'd watched him break down when he saw it again. I described how every tool stolen from my shed wasn't just metal and plastic. It was hours of labor, days of planning, seasons of work. I didn't cry, but I spoke slowly. I made them feel the weight. After I stepped down, the courtroom was quiet. Russell's lawyer tried some last-ditch garbage about lack of direct intent and community misunderstandings. Melinda's lawyer tried to paint her as a well-meaning community leader manipulated by a criminal operation. That fell apart the second. The jury saw her HOA notes with $ signs next to addresses. The verdicts came back fast. Russell Boyd, guilty on 5 counts: organized theft, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, possession of stolen property, and burglary. Sentence: 12 years. No parole for the first 8. Tyler and the 3 other guards pled out between 4 and 7 years each, plus full restitution to victims. Tyler cried in court, "I didn't blink." The fence: 6 years, already in custody. And Melinda Shaw, guilty on charges of conspiracy, criminal facilitation, and financial fraud tied to illegal HOA fund transfers. Sentence: 5 years plus seizure of her personal accounts and forced resignation from all civic roles. The courtroom emptied slowly. A few other farmers I'd met during the investigation came over, shook my hand, nodded. No one cheered. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was the kind that left burn marks instead of fireworks. 2 weeks later, I got a formal letter from the prosecutor's office. Asset recovery had netted nearly $250,000 from seizures, cash, property sales, the stolen equipment. I was awarded $62,000 in direct compensation. That covered everything I'd lost, plus some for my trouble. The rest was split among the other victims, 11 farmers in total. Mitch called me the day he got his check. "Dylan," he said, "I'm buying my land back." That hit harder than I expected. And the HOA. They disbanded their security service within a week of the verdict, replaced it with a licensed firm out of Lincoln, background checks, training, accountability. Imagine that. Prairie Homes held an emergency election to replace Melinda. I didn't vote. I couldn't. I didn't live in their jurisdiction, but I got invited to speak. They asked me how I'd uncovered it all, how I'd built the surveillance system, how I'd stayed one step ahead. I kept it short. "I'm an engineer," I said. "I don't catch thieves. I build systems that do." They laughed. It was the first time I'd heard real laughter in that community. The sign went up a week later. Big, bold letters at the entrance to my property, Hawkstead Farm, under around-the-clock surveillance. Ask Russell Boyd how that worked out. There's a sound the prairie makes after a storm. It's not silence, not really. It's a soft, steady hush, like the world's holding its breath and finally letting it out. That's what the farm felt like in the weeks after the trial. Calm, honest, alive. I started my mornings the same as always. Coffee strong enough to punch back, boots in the dirt by 7, checking drip lines and greenhouse temps before the dew had a chance to burn off. Only now, when I looked around, I didn't see weak spots. I saw a web of defense I'd built myself. Not just sensors and cameras, a mindset. I knew what this place was worth, and I wasn't letting it go without a fight, ever again. The new equipment came fast, better than what I'd lost, paid for by the restitution check. I upgraded the generator to a model I used to dream about, reinstalled the irrigation pumps with pressure sensors, got a replacement welder with digital controls. Overkill? Maybe, but I'd earned it. More than that, I expanded. I bought the adjacent 10 acres from an older couple who were moving to Arizona. Said they didn't trust the area after what happened. I couldn't blame them. I got it cheap and turned it into a nursery field for late-season vegetables. Built a second storage shed, planted cover crops, and sowed a batch of sunflowers along the road just because I could. People started driving by just to see the place. I got a call from a regional farming magazine asking for an interview, then a local radio station, then a national news outlet, some anchor in a blue suit wanting to label me the farmer who fought back. I declined most of it, gave them a quote, nothing more. "I'm not a hero," I said. "I just got tired of being robbed." Still, the story spread. I heard rumors that other farmers across the Midwest started installing their own motion sensors, GPS trackers, even tree-mounted cams like mine. Some reached out to me through email asking for advice. I helped where I could, wrote up a guide, made a PDF, called it Thieves Hate Patterns. Then one day, Walt, my retired trucker turned seasonal helper, came by with his usual thermos of homemade iced tea and a crooked grin. "You hear about Prairie Homes?" he asked. I hadn't. Turns out, after the HOA scandal, the community split in half. Some residents wanted to dissolve the HOA completely. Others begged for stricter rules. The board was gutted. Legal fights flared up. But the real change, they opened the gate. No more fake checkpoint. No more rent-a-cops with egos. Just a sign that said, "Private road, drive respectfully." The new security firm stuck around, but they didn't harass passers-by or act like they owned the sky. They waved, smiled, acted like neighbors. Melinda Shaw's mansion went up for sale. No one bought it for months. Russell Boyd's house sat empty. His garage padlocked. His name scraped off the mailbox. Someone painted over the curb numbers with red spray paint. I didn't ask who. But the best part? No more thefts. Not just from me, from anyone. Not in the county. Not in the neighboring one. Whatever rot had taken hold under Prairie Home's polished veneer had been dug out, root and all. I was in the barn one evening, checking battery levels on my sensors, when a truck pulled into my drive. Old Ford, mud-splattered. Guy stepped out wearing boots older than my tractor. "Mitch," I said, surprised. He nodded, held out a six-pack of domestic beer, and said, "Wanted to say thanks." I looked past him. In the back of the truck sat a familiar green tractor. His old one, polished up, clean as hell. "You got it running again?" He smiled. "Runs better than ever." We sat on the porch for a while, drinking, watching the sky turn fire orange over the fields. He told me he'd bought back his land, planted again, starting slow, but starting. "Funny thing," he said, leaning back. "If they hadn't come after you, none of us would have known how deep it went." "Funny," I agreed. "Or just poetic." He raised his bottle in a silent toast. I clinked it with mine. Later that week, I added one last thing to the farm. Not a tool, not a camera, though I had plenty of both. It was a plaque, mounted right by the barn entrance. Hawkstead Farm, built with soil, sweat, and systems established. 2023 robbed once. Never again. Sometimes I catch visitors pausing in front of it. They smile, nod, maybe take a photo, but they don't ask questions. They know the story. Everyone does. And if they don't, well, I've got footage.